everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of the WoolJewel podcast. I'm Caitlin, and this is my knitting podcast, and occasionally I get up to some sewing, spinning, weaving, dyeing, just other crafty stuff. So today I have some knitting works in progress. I have a new cast on, and I've started a new sweater design and some sewing to share. And later I am hoping that my husband Ben will be able to join us because he has started knitting a Lopapalgebra sweater, and we have had an interesting time doing lots and lots of math trying to figure out how to turn a pattern that was written for DK weight yarn and make the same thing using bulky weight yarn. So if you're interested in how to do that, I am gonna have him come on and we're gonna talk about his process. So if you wanna get in touch with me, the best way is probably sending me a message on Ravelry. I'm also pretty active on Instagram as @WoolJewel. I'm also WoolJewel on Ravelry. And we have a Facebook group and a Ravelry group. So I'll have links to all of that below, and the Ravelry group is gonna be the best place to keep up to date with all the knit-alongs I have going on. So the ones I've got going on right now are a year-long sock knit-along. I will pretty much take any of your socks that you knit. They'll probably qualify for this knit-along. The only rule is that you can't double dip them and into other knit-alongs. So for the sock knit-along, I wanted to share with you guys that I have a donation from Allison from the For Knit's Sakes podcast to give away as a prize. So she sent me these two project bags. So they're these little sacks, and then there is a perfectly sized strap to hang on your wrist. So you can walk and knit at the same time, which is awesome, and it is the perfect size for a sock project. So I'm gonna have this be one of the prizes for the year-long sock knit-along. I forgot to mention it's called the Any Sock'll Do KAL. So she sent me one to give away and one to keep, and I'm gonna keep the green one because I already have a couple yellow project bags. So I'm gonna give away the yellow one to you guys. Yeah, I'm looking forward to using mine a lot because I have a lot of fun things coming up. Like a lot of the fall fests around here are fun to bring knitting to, and it's outdoors, and so I always like to have knitting with me. And a lot of times I'm standing up at these things, but I don't really, the best I've got right now is like a tote bag that goes on my shoulder, and then the yarn kind of gets stuck as I'm trying to knit with it. So I'm looking forward to trying this out. Yeah, so thank you so much, Allison. She sewed these herself. Go check out her podcast. I will link to it in the description below as well. So thanks again, Allison. And I've got the Rhinebackup knit-along with Elise from the My Two Tips podcast. She's co-hosting with me. And that is a knit-along for warm weather garments, probably sweaters, because the idea is that everybody knits their Rhinebeck sweater and then it's just too hot to wear it. So this is gonna be your backup Rhinebeck sweater, but it's gonna be more of a warm weather thing. So it's a pretty laid back knit along. There's not too many rules. Just go check out the group and show us what you're knitting. I also have a new knit along to announce that I'm co-hosting with Linda from the Hip Hip Barbinette podcast. And this is the Icelandic knit along. So this is a knit along for anything that you're knitting with an Icelandic yarn. It can be a pattern written by an Icelandic designer or yarn dyed in Iceland. Just anything that has to do with Iceland pretty much will qualify for this knit along. So if you're not sure what you want to do, Linda's Ravelry group has tons of inspiration and ideas and a list of designers and dyers and all that good stuff, so you can kind of check it out if you need some ideas. And Linda also has lined up tons of amazing prizes for this knit along, so you definitely want to get on board. I think it's going to run from September to January. I'll have to double check the dates, but I will link to her Ravelry group because she has all the details in her group. We're gonna do the drawing from her group. So you want to be a subscriber to both of our podcasts and a member of both of our Ravelry groups to qualify for this. And I'm going to start a chatter thread in my own group for this knit along, and may or may not be pulling prize winners from that, but the official prize winners are gonna be drawn from her Ravelry group. So you definitely wanna go and join her group so that you can qualify and put your Icelandic stuff in there. So I am going to be knitting a Lopapalgebra for that knit along, and I picked up the yarn when Ben and I were in Iceland in April. So it's been sitting around, and this is gonna be the perfect opportunity to use it. Yeah, so I have some Lopi. I'm gonna knit my Lopapalgebra, and Ben has already started his, and you will see it when I have him join me later. So he's not gonna officially qualify for the knit along because he started earlier than the start date. But hopefully it'll give you some inspiration. And then since we had to do a lot of math to kind of take a different pattern and apply it to the yarn that he has, maybe it'll help you if you want to do the same thing or something similar. So I'm really looking forward to this knit along. I think it's going to be really fun and a really good chance to celebrate Icelandic knitting traditions and celebrate all the amazing makers coming from such an incredible place. I also have a Patreon page, and I have a few new patrons since the last episode, so I wanted to thank you guys so much for hopping on the Patreon train and helping the podcast out. If you want to help me keep the podcast going and eventually get more regular uploads from me, that's one of my goals on Patreon. You can find the link below. Okay, so let's talk works in progress. I have a couple I will bring back from the last episode that I haven't finished yet. And the first one is the Angel Face Turban by Amy Appel. And I'm knitting this out of, I think it's Hedgehog Fiber Skinny Singles. I lost the tag a while back, but I'm like 90% sure. And I think the colorway is Pollen. Okay, so this is like a cute little turban. I'm really excited about it. I've never knit anything like it. It has interesting construction. It's got this kind of ruching in the back, and then you join it in the round. I don't even remember. It's been a while since I've worked on this. It's been like over a week. So it's joined in the round, and then you add on ties to the front. So it's like a little beanie, and then you can tie it into a bow on the top. So that's what I'm working on right now. But I have to admit that I did not test my gauge for this project. I just cast on and started going because I kind of didn't care that much. So I ended up doing a different number of repeats, and I just kept trying it on to see like how far I wanted it to go. And so that kind of messed with the numbers when I had to join it in the round and just start doing all this other stuff. And I think I'm gonna have to make some adjustments as I knit this tie as well. And so yeah, when I figured that out, it was kind of late at night, and I didn't feel like doing all this stuff just to try to figure out how I was gonna go about doing it. And so I just set it aside and haven't picked it up since. But I don't think it'll be long. I don't think it'll take too much knitting time to actually finish it. But I'm looking forward to having this instead of just the typical beanies that I already have. I think it'll be really cute. Yeah, so there's not too much to share about this. I just wanted to show you what little progress I've made, and I will move on. So the next project that I have already shown you guys is the Wool and Honey sweater. I can't remember how far I've gotten on this in the last episode, but let me tell you, I have not made it past the first sleeve. This sleeve is like never ending. I feel like every single time I try it on, it just stays the same length. I feel like it's not getting any longer, and it's so frustrating. And these needles, these are 3.25 millimeter, which I think is the smallest I've ever used for a sweater. So I just feel like it's taking a long time. Oh wow, and I just found a dropped stitch. That's cool. Okay, so I just found, so these slip stitches that make up this hexagon design. Are they hexagons? Yeah, they're hexagons. And I guess I just like never knit this slip stitch back into the fabric, so I'm gonna have to go in and fix that somehow. I'll probably just take a piece of yarn and like weave it in and attach it as I go, just like I'm weaving in an end. Okay, but yeah, so I haven't decided how far I want to go on this because I know that I want a longish cuff, maybe like this, of ribbing. But I'm also hesitant to just start the ribbing because I know it's gonna take forever because it's gonna be on even smaller needles. So I'm just like not motivated to do this, and I know how long that sleeve took, and just thinking about having to make another one, I'm just not looking forward to it because garter stitch in the round is not fun. I think if I mean, I'm not gonna knit this again because I almost never knit things twice, and if I do, it's because I really super love it. So I'm gonna love wearing this, but I'm not gonna knit it again. But if you're gonna knit it, I would suggest knitting it flat and seaming it, because you can do an invisible seam in garter stitch and you're not gonna get this down the back. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but you can see the jog where the round ends and begins. And I really, really wish that she had put the beginning of the round on the side instead of straight down the back. It really doesn't bother me that much, but it's like, it would have been so easy. I don't know why I didn't just do this, because I knew this was gonna happen and I just kind of kept going anyway. But when I started it, I was traveling and I didn't want to make it more complicated for myself, so I just kept going. But if you knit this, if that kind of thing bothers you, you might just want to put the beginning of the round on the side. Or I don't know, there might be some video tutorials or something that show you how to get rid of that jog in the round. I heard that like maybe slipping either the first or the last stitch of the round can sometimes eliminate that. I don't know if that works in garter stitch, but yeah, I just feel like that would have been easy to do, because honestly, like if I open up the yoke and put the beginning of the round on the side instead of straight down the back, it still looks the same. It's still kind of like that asymmetrical look to the pattern. I guess the only thing that you'd have to be careful about is where you put the short rows, because the short rows are starting from the back and going back and forth instead of from the side. So you'd have to kind of figure that out. Or you could just knit the yoke as is, and then when you get to the sleeve separation, change the beginning of the round to go underneath one of the sleeves. And yeah, I think that's probably what I would have done. Either do that as the beginning of the round or switch to knitting it flat and seaming up the back with an invisible seam. But the good thing is it's in the back, so I'm not gonna see it, and so I'm just like not gonna care that much. I did have some people ask me last week about my neckline and why it has this split in it. So that's not part of the design. I just tend to knit the ribbing. If it's a top down and it starts with the ribbing around the neck, I will usually just knit the ribbing flat and then join in the round for the main part of the sweater and then seam this at the end. And that's just because I feel like it's really fiddly, especially with small yarn and needles, to join in the round without accidentally twisting, because there's been so many times where I've tried to join in the round and I checked and I checked and I checked and I was super careful about not twisting, and then they still ended up twisted somehow. So if that's something that you experience too, just knit the ribbing flat or knit the first 1 or 2 rows flat, and then it's way easier to see if it's twisted or not. But I just went ahead and did the whole ribbing section flat. And then I leave a little bit longer of a tail than I normally would so that I have enough to seam it up with. I just think it, like, I don't want to waste time. Like, it doesn't take as much time to seam it up and weave in that end than it does to cast on and redo it a million times. And it's less annoying, and I just like get really angry when it ends up twisting, and it's so frustrating. And sometimes you don't even realize it's twisted until you've already done several rounds or something, and yeah, it's just annoying. I really hate casting on. I wish I liked it. For me, I don't know what it is, but I feel I don't know what it is, but it's really annoying to me when you're, especially like in a long tail cast on, when the yarn, the working yarn ends up getting twisted and twisted and twisted, or depending on which way your yarn is twisted, it'll start to get untwisted. There's something about the way that I cast on that twists or untwists the yarn, and it's so annoying. I don't know how to make it stop. I've tried everything I can think to just keep the yarn nice and even, but a lot of times on the needle it ends up like untwisting, or the working yarn will twist up on itself because I've been twisting it as I'm casting on. And I don't know why it frustrates me so much, but it's really annoying. I think it's more annoying that I can't figure out why, and I can't figure out how to make it stop. So please tell me if that happens to you too, because I don't know if like I'm just doing it in some weird way or not, or if it's even something that anybody else notices. Okay, moving on. So my next work in progress is a new cast on from last time. I've got it in my April 9 Designs Llama cactus bag, Alpaca, I don't know, I can never remember which one's which, but yeah, a super cute bag. My friend Michelle got it for me. And let me just show you how awesome this bag is. I know I've shown it before, but in case you weren't there. Okay, so it's a big bag. And then inside there's a pocket that separates the bag into 2 sections. And the pocket is also really big. So I've got some notions in there, but it's big enough to like fold a piece of paper if you have your pattern printed out. It's big enough to just fold the paper in half and just slide it in there. It's awesome. I love this bag. Yeah, okay, so I have started my Ninilchik Swoncho. I think I might have mentioned it last time. This is one that I've been wanting to start for a really long time. Like when it first came out, I knew I was gonna knit it, but it was just a matter of what colors and which yarn. So I'll show it to you. Here we go. So I'm using gray as my main color, and then the contrast colors are a white, and that's got a slight speckle in it. There's like little tiny bits of speckling, and a red and this turquoisey blue. So these are all Madeline Tosh DK yarns. I want to say that they're Tosh DK, but I can't remember for sure. So the gray color is a one of a kind that I got in their sales section, and I think, oh my gosh, I'm super not prepared because I don't remember the names of any of these colorways. The white one I know is Salt. I want to say that this bluish green color is Undergrowth, and the red one, I don't remember the red one at all. I don't remember. Sorry. If you really want to know, I can look it up for you. Also, I think that this is going to look borderline Christmassy. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. I'm okay with it if it looks Christmassy, but I hope it's just like not gonna look weird to wear it in the fall too. yeah, so I'm enjoying this pattern so far. I think I'm gonna really enjoy wearing it. I love like big loose fitting things. But as you do the increases, the rounds do feel super, super long. So I just have to get used to that. This is a great color work pattern because usually you're only doing 2 color rounds. Occasionally there will be 3 color rounds. And I haven't figured out a way to do 3 color work that is convenient and comfortable and easy, I guess. So what I've ended up doing is I do 2 of the colors the normal way, and then, so, okay, how do I explain how I do this? So I take just 2 of the 3 colors and I knit around the round, and then if I come to a stitch that's supposed to be the 3rd color, I just slip it and I don't knit it. And then I do a second round with the 3rd color, slipping the stitches I had already knit and then knitting the ones that didn't get knit on the previous round. I hope that makes sense. So I take 2 rounds to do 3 color work. I haven't figured out a way to hold all 3 at once. So I do my 2 colors with left hand in one color, and then the second color I throw with my right hand. So I haven't figured out where the 3rd color would go in that setup. And so this just, I think it's actually quicker to do 2 rounds quickly instead of 1 round where I'm constantly setting down one yarn and picking up another one every few stitches. So yeah, I'm kind of curious how people like to do that. If you're like me and you do the 2 colors, one in the left hand, one in the right hand, I'm curious where you put your 3rd color. I've had some people say that they have 2 colors going on 1 finger, but I cannot for the life of me get those 2 colors to stay separate on my finger where I hold the one. Like they always end up too close together and I can't pick it up easily with the needle. So that's about it for that sweater, and my last work in progress is a new design I'm working on. And I'm kind of doing this in the spirit of the Rhinebackup knit along. I wanted to make a sweater that has overall lace. And so here's the lace I'm using. And so I'm just gonna do like a really boxy sweater. I haven't decided what kind of neckline I'm going to do or how deep I want the neckline to go, but I'm kind of at the point where I have to make a decision. But so far I've just enjoyed knitting this kind of larger scale lace. So I hope you guys like it too. I am gonna keep doing this on the back, and then I haven't decided what kind of fabric the sleeves are gonna be. They might be all ribbing, or they might have more of this lace. But I'll just see how much yarn I have once I get there. I have like 5 different ideas in my head, and I'm not really sure which direction it's gonna go until I actually get to that point. The yarn I'm using is Madeline Tosh Work Sock, which is amazing. I have been obsessed with this yarn for a couple weeks, and I think people might be tired of me talking about it, like posted it on Instagram, and I don't know. I just really, really love it. It's really dense, it's really smooth. I have frogged it many, many times, trying to like redo and like reimagine certain things for this design. So, and it still looks just as new after frogging and knitting and refrogging and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's really, really great. It's called Work Sock. It's not a sock yarn. It's 100% merino, and it is not fingering weight. It's like a heavy sport weight. I would feel comfortable using this in a DK weight pattern. Actually, it's skinnier than a DK, but I think it's dense enough that the yardage is similar to a DK, and it kind of will drape in a similar way, I think. But since it is denser, I think that it's gonna just drape really nicely as a lace pullover. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is gonna turn out. I hope you guys like it too. And I really hope that it is done for Rhinebeck so that I can wear it, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be hot again this year. And the colorway of that yarn I'm using is another one-of-a-kind from Madeline Tosh. I'm kind of obsessed with their one-of-a-kind section. That's all I've got for knitting right now until I have Ben come and join me. I will insert that here or at the end of the video. I'm not sure yet. Okay, Ben's here to tell you about his sweater.
Hey everyone. So it's been getting colder and I've also been getting more and more stressed out at work, so knitting has been a nice change of pace every day. The other day it was like in the low 50s in the morning and I was super cold and I was already knitting my sweater and I just wanted to knit it even faster. So this is my first sweater and it's a special one because it's made out of yarn that we got in Iceland on our trip last April. So I've been using this book.
We talked about it before. I think a lot of people are using it now. I can't even attempt the author's name, but Linda from the Hip Hip Barbonette podcast has an interview with the designer / author of this book, so you can go check that out if you want. But yeah, she's Icelandic and she wrote this that has lots of different options for color works for the yoke of your Lopapalgebra. So Ben and I are both using this for the Icelandic knit along.
Right. So this is my first sweater. I've knit a shawl, which I think I've showed everyone before. I've knit a hat and I've knit socks. Those are the three things I've knit, right?
I think so.
Anything else?
What hat did you knit?
The hat that I didn't like and
the
gave
black
to you.
and white one. Yeah, but you didn't talk about it on the podcast, did you?
Anyway, so this is my first time knitting something like really big and with chunky needles or chunky yarn.
I mean both. They're both big.
I like it. I like how much faster it's going than.
So what size needles are you using?
So I'm using size 10, US 10.
US 10.
For the body and for the arms, and then US 8 or 7 for the cuffs.
Well, why don't you show them? So you knit the ribbing on the body. We knew you wanted to use a 10 for this. So I said to go down a size for the ribbing, so he used a US 9 for this ribbing, and we thought that after knitting the whole body, we figured it was still too loose, so then we switched to US 8 for the ribbing on the sleeves.
Right. So depending how it looks and how it feels when I finish the sweater, I might go back and change the ribbing on the bottom to a size 8. We'll see. I hope not. I hope I can just leave it the way it is.
Yeah, you probably don't have
I'll
to.
just be too excited at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway, the thing that's been really surprising to me is how much math goes into knitting one of these.
Well, but why? Because this book, so this book has complete patterns for lots of different sizes, from like babies to adult, but it's all written at 1 gauge. But Ben wants to knit his sweater using Lopi, which is the bulky Lopi. But this is written for, I don't remember which Lopi it is, but it's like the DK. It's close to DK, I think.
Is it the yarn that you got for your sweater?
No.
Okay.
Let Lopi. Yeah. So it's written, so this is the same type of yarn, just like the bulky version.
Yeah, so the first thing I did, Caitlin had me do, is knit a swatch to figure out my gauge. And I did a nice 4x4 swatch. Measured it up. I found out that my gauge was 3.5 stitches per inch instead of the 4.5 that the book recommends. So because of that, everything has been different when reading the pattern. So
we've had to stop at every step and do some math.
Yeah.
So the first thing was figure out how many to cast on.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we can't give away the pattern.
No.
Because you have to pay for it. So we took the cast on number that it suggested for the size that he would be knitting if he was doing that gauge, which was the size large.
Yep.
And then we figured out with that stitch count at 4.5 stitches per inch, it was going to be a certain number of inches circumference for that size. Or I guess we already knew that from looking at the size chart. It says it's going to be a certain circumference, but we just double checked with the stitch count numbers. So then we figured out, I don't know, say it's like a 40-inch circumference. Then we just multiplied 40 inches times his 3.5 stitches per inch. And so that gave us his cast on number.
Yeah. And since then, I mean, I've knit the body mostly. I've knit the 2 sleeves, which went incredibly fast. I think one day I came home and just started knitting at around 6 p.m. and
pretty much finished the sleeve.
Went all the way until midnight and finished the sleeve. And then last night I finally got to join everything together, so it actually finally looks like something instead of just 3 pieces.
Well, let's talk about the sleeves.
Oh.
Because you have to do shaping on the sleeves, right?
Yeah.
So that was a lot of complicated math too, right? So do you remember how we did that?
We measured my arm and got how...
No. We just went by the pattern.
Oh.
So we did the same thing. We figured out, based on the stitch count of the pattern, we figured out how many inches around they wanted for the top of the sleeve and how many inches around they wanted for the wrist, based on the stitch counts that were in there. And then we figured out, based on their row gauge or their round gauge, how many inches happened between the wrist or the cast on and the armpit. Because you're supposed to be decreasing every 5 or 6 rounds or something like that according to the pattern, but if Ben did that, then his sleeve would be way too long because his row gauge is way bigger. Right. So we had to fit in all those decreases in the same amount of space but in fewer rows. So we figured out Ben's row gauge.
Right, which was 5 stitches per inch.
5 rows per inch. Rounds, rows, whatever. Yeah. So I don't remember what the length was, but say it wants you to knit, if you have to fit 10 decrease rounds into 14 inches, we just figured out like how many, how do I explain this?
How many rounds in the 14 inches and then divide it by...
So we knew, oh yeah, this is how we did it. So we figured out that he was going to end up having to increase 20 stitches or something like that. So then we had to fit in, because you increase 2 stitches per increase round. So we had to fit in 10 increase rounds into 14 inches according to his gauge.
Yeah.
So that brought us to, what algebra did we do to figure that out? It's a lot of algebra.
Yeah.
But we were able to do it, and I am somebody who flunked out of college algebra and had to retake it. So I feel like, but I don't know. Now I have a really good handle on sweater math. Okay, so in 14 inches, you had a certain number of rounds. So we knew it had to be 14 inches. So, and then we had to figure out how to evenly space 10 increase rounds into that 14 inches. So you take that row count that fits in the 14 inches and divide it by 10. And that's going to give you how many rows are going to be in between every
So for mine, it was like you knit 6 rows and then on the 6th increase 2.
Yeah.
Right.
I might have said it was 6 for the original one, but that's what we ended up with, was he figured out that he had to increase every 6 rounds. Yeah. And then when he did all of that and measured it, he was like blown away that it was the exact measurements that it was supposed to be.
Yeah, we needed to get up to 54 stitches.
Yeah, we were going for 54 stitches at the top.
Yeah. And
for it to measure 14 inches. And it was like exactly right.
It was like incredible.
It was pretty exciting.
And then that brings us to the body and figuring out for the armpit holes. It was just like crazy last night. Basically, it was like 9 stitches for the armpit holes, And I forget how many were on the sleeve.
Well, we just subtracted because the armpit and the body, you're gonna graft them together when you're all done. So these have to be the same number of stitches. So if you figure out one, then you can figure out the other.
Yeah.
But we did the same exact type of math where you figure out how many inches is the original stitch count gonna give you, and then use that measurement to figure out within your gauge how many stitches you need. So you multiply that measurement of inches or centimeters or whatever times your stitch count per inch.
Right.
So everything we were doing, we were multiplying by, if we were figuring out a stitch count, it was always multiplying the measurement times 3.5.
Yeah. And last night, it just like worked out perfectly. Putting just counting the stitches and putting them where they needed to go was just like, it was like magic. I couldn't believe that.
You mean combining them? Because he knit the body and the two sleeves all separately from the bottom up. And then now we're combining it all for the yoke. So you put the underarm stitches on the waist yarn, and then you knit across the sleeve, then you knit across the front, and then you knit across the other sleeve, or around the other sleeve, and then you knit across the back.
Yeah.
So now it's all connected, and he's ready to start his yoke. But we have a lot more work to do before you can do your yoke.
Yeah.
So, do you remember what we have to figure out for your yoke?
Yeah, so.
We can show them the one that you want to do. So he wants to do this one, this chart, and the problem with these is that they're written in a different gauge.
Right.
So, the thing with color work repeats is you really just, for the stitches at least, you just need to have the same multiples. So these are all written for 8 stitch repeats or 16 stitch repeats. So with his stitch count, we figured out that he was closer to an 8 stitch repeat.
So I needed to decrease.
Except he was 4 stitches off. So in the next round, when he was connecting them all, we evenly spaced 4 decreases to get him to a stitch count divisible by 8.
Right.
Now, the issue is the length of the yoke. If he just knits this chart as is, the neck is going to come up to the top of his head. Like, it's going to be way too
It's like 8 inches
long.
too long. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the one that he's doing, the chart that he's doing is a 50 round chart. So we figured out with the given gauge in the book, how many inches vertically is 50 rounds gonna be. What was it, like 7 or 8 inches? It was like 8 point something inches for the yoke depth, at least for the chart part. So we took that 8 point whatever inches and multiplied it by your row gauge, which was 5 rows per inch.
Yeah.
So then we had, if we had to get it somewhere between like 40 and 42 rounds,
Yeah.
is going to be his yoke. So now we have to somehow condense this yoke design, squish it into what did you decide on?
41.
41 rounds instead of the 50 that's given. So luckily some of those are going to be easy because like at the bottom of this, I can't give away the whole chart, but at the bottom of this there's all this blank, all these blank rows with no color work. So what we did was we figured out percentage-wise where did the yoke decreases happen. So they happen at like, 25% of the yoke is this bottom spot, and then you knit 15% of it before you do the next decrease. Or I don't remember the numbers, but we figured out percentage-wise where do the decreases happen, and then we plugged those percentages into his 41 rounds.
Yeah.
And we figured out which rounds of the 41 are we going to do the yoke decreases.
Right.
Luckily, the decreases can happen still within the same places in the repeats. So if you're following an 8 stitch repeat, color work repeat, and you decrease 1 stitch per 8 inches or per 8 stitches, it's gonna be the same amount of decreases in the new gauge because it's still the same percentage of decreasing. So luckily we don't have to do any math for how many he's gonna decrease per round. That just stays the same. Because it's always 1/8 decreased. So we figured out which rows we wanted to put the decreased rounds in. Are you bored?
No.
This is for your sweater.
I'm not bored.
Okay. So we figured out where the decrease rounds are gonna go, and I'm using stitchfiddle.com to make a new color work chart. We could just go off of this and just kind of wing it, but I think it's easier to just make a new chart.
It's so much easier to like see it with the colors that I have.
Yeah, it's really hard to visualize colors because these are just white boxes with X's in it for the different colors. And he's got these really like saturated colors. They look darker on camera, I think, but we've got a dark purple, we've got a blackish orangey red, and then we have this super dark blue that's almost black. And that's gonna be going on this beige. So luckily we have enough beige to also incorporate into the color work. So right now we're in the process of making a new chart. And we're just kind of taking it section by section, like between each decrease, how can we condense the design that's in between each decrease?
Right,
to make it
make it still look like the pattern and like the...
Yeah, we're kind of just using that as a guide for where to put like chevrons and diamonds and whatever. But it's really helpful. It's a really good website, and you can also make lace charts and things on it. So yeah, if you need to make a new color work chart, or if you just kind of want to like map out, even if you're not making a whole new chart, you can use a given chart but just plug in your own colors to kind of get an idea what it's going to look like.
Yeah, and I think we're going to spend some time today just like changing the colors around to see what looks best before we actually start knitting.
Ben's never done stranded color work before, and things always look different than you think they're going to, and so it'll be interesting to see how those colors knit up.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm excited. I just can't wait to wear it.
I know. And then you're gonna make me one? Yeah.
You gonna make me one?
No.
Well,
you can make your own now.
Yep, I don't get to have
and really
any more
fast. He's been knitting really fast.
Well, chunky.
It's chunky. Yeah.
Yeah, you have the individual stranded pieces, right?
Yeah, so it's the plitelope, and it comes in a plate, and it's like almost like finger or pencil roving. It's like pencil roving, so it breaks apart really easily. It's really light and airy, and then you hold it 2 strands together, and it's probably going to be as thick as this, but it's going to be lighter.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I really like the weight of the sweater already. It feels really heavy when you pick it up. So I know it's going to be
super warm.
Really, really warm.
Yeah.
Which will be good because it's getting cold.
It's going to be awesome. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, me too. My first sweater.
Yeah. So are you going to be on next time so you can talk about your knitting your yoke?
Yeah, hopefully I'll be done by then. We'll see.
We'll see.
If it goes well.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about sweater math,
that's definitely
leave a comment.
That's definitely like the most eye-opening part about this for me was like how much math is involved.
I wouldn't have been able to do this if I hadn't already knit countless sweaters, because I've had to do this a lot, because I almost never knit a sleeve to pattern. I almost always have to shorten it, but I want the same amount of decreases, so I'm just used to like doing that.
The other thing that was really daunting is I think for the sleeves a couple times I did the increase, but I did it incorrectly. Like I knit it in back or in front when I was supposed to knit in back.
So he's using the make one left and make one right for his sleeve increases.
Yeah. So a couple times I would be looking at the yarn and seeing that there was these holes in the increase part, and I showed Caitlin, and she was able to really quickly kind of just like take out that one row and go down maybe 5 or 6 rounds.
The column. We found the offending increases that had holes. So essentially the make one left and make one right, it takes the bar in between 2 stitches and twists it, and that twist makes a new loop for the new stitch.
Mm-hmm.
So what was happening was Ben was knitting into that bar without twisting it, because sometimes you have to knit into the back of it, but he wasn't doing that. So it was just like basically just a yarn over increase, so it was making a hole. So I showed him how to find those, and then you follow the column up, and then whatever stitch is on that needle, you like go to that column,
take it all the way down,
and you rip it all the way down. So you have these ladders, and then you just take that bar, and it's really easy with a crochet hook. You can just lift the bar and twist it, and then pull the stitch through. Yeah, and then so fixing with a crochet hook is super easy.
But it's still like my worst nightmare. Like that's the most scariest thing. Like when I see Caitlin just taking the stitches off and then going down the column, it's just like
it's just like unraveling. It's scary.
Or even just like having to take the stitches off the needles to put the holding yarn. What's it called?
So so there's a couple times running some waste yarn through some stitches. There's a few times where it was actually easier to just take it off the needle and then run it through instead of just doing it stitch by stitch off the needle, which is what I usually do. Mm-hmm. But for the underarms, it was just easier because there was a few places where we actually had to put the waste yarn in the row below and not the active row. So it was just more complicated. So it was just easier to take the needle out. But I know that this yarn is really sticky, and it's really like, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not slippery at all. So it wasn't in danger of
just like, so scary.
Yeah, don't be scared. It's just yarn. It can't do anything to you.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. You can make it do what you want it to do.
Yeah. I'm still learning. Glad I have you to help me.
Yeah. I'm glad you're knitting your own sweater. I don't have to do it for you.
Well, you still have to make me a cardigan.
Well, I made the cardigan. It just doesn't fit. So I'll have to redo it. That's another project for another time. Okay, so if you have any questions about what we talked about with all the math we did for the Lopapalgebra, or if you need help with something similar, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. Yeah, or if something we said just totally didn't make any sense at all, I'll try to make it more clear.
Maybe you should do a podcast next time with the math.
Well, I was thinking about making like a separate video tutorial so people who are interested in this kind of thing can like find that information without having to sift through a whole podcast or find it inside of an episode or something. Mm-hmm. But that takes time and effort, so we'll see. My priority is getting podcasts up. Yeah. We'll do the extra stuff when I have extra time.
Okay.
But yeah. It's in my brain. It's a plan. I'm thinking about it. Okay, bye.
Bye.
I do have some sewing to share for this week. The first thing I'm going to show you is this t-shirt that I made. This is a t-shirt I made for Ben. He picked out the fabric. He went to the fabric store with me and picked it out. They did not have a lot of options for knits, and I was surprised he picked this because at first I thought it was kind of cutesy, but he likes it, so whatever. Yeah, I think it looks cute on him, and it was my first thing I've sewn with a jersey or a knit fabric, so that was an interesting learning process. I've got some stretch stitches on my machine, and so I got a scrap piece of this fabric and I tried out a bunch of different stitches with different tensions, all that good stuff, to see what was going to be the best one to use. And all of the stitches on my machine that are specifically stretch stitches looked terrible. They looked so bad. They made the fabric look like it had holes in it. I messed with the tension and everything. Like I did everything I could. And then I remembered that a lot of people just use the basic zigzag stitch for knits. And so I tried that, and that one looked the best and stretched the best actually, except on my machine it's not labeled as a stretch stitch, so I wasn't thinking that I should try that first, but that ended up being the best thing. I don't know what the stretch stitches are going to be used for, if not for knits, but I don't know why they looked so terrible on this knit fabric. So if you have any information you can share with me about that, I would love to learn more about that. So it was an interesting process. I did not use a pattern for this actually. I made my own. I watched a YouTube video on how to clone your clothes. I think the channel's called With Wendy. So this girl Wendy shows you how to make a pattern from an item of clothing that you already own, like you know it fits, so you just want to kind of clone it. So if you want to find it, you can just search Clone Your Clothes with Wendy. I guess I can link it below if I remember. But yeah, so I used that tutorial to make a pattern using one of Ben's t-shirts that he likes the fit of a lot. And this was an older t-shirt that's kind of getting worn out. So he wanted a replacement anyway. But since it was kind of cheaply made, it didn't lie totally flat when I was trying to fold it and all that stuff. So it was a little bit difficult to actually trace it out onto tracing paper and make pattern pieces. And so basically the idea is that you just put the fabric onto the paper and trace it out, leaving a seam allowance of however big of a seam allowance you want to leave. So the pattern pieces are slightly bigger than the pieces themselves in the t-shirt. So I did that, and I even did a bigger seam allowance than she suggested, and I tried to follow that as I was sewing it, but somehow the t-shirt ended up way skinnier than we were expecting. It still fits him great. It was just a closer fit than we were expecting it to be based on the t-shirt that we cloned. So I'm not sure how that happened either. And this was the first time that I have done this kind of contrast neckband thing. Don't look at the inside, it looks terrible. Yeah, but here you can see I used like a little, I don't know, you can buy this like on a roll, and so I just got enough to go around his neck. And that was interesting. So I guess the principle is that you have to have it stretched out as you sew it, but you're not stretching the fabric of the t-shirt. And I watched a lot of videos on how to do this properly, and it all made sense to me. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a piece of cake, because I totally get it. I understand you have to stretch the neckband but not stretch the t-shirt, and it has to be stretched like a certain amount for it to lie flat, all that good stuff. And I thought I did it, but I guess I just didn't do it well enough. And I think maybe the back wasn't, like when I sewed across the back, this wasn't stretched out as much as it should have been, because when he wears it, it just kind of like in the back it sticks up in a little bit of a funny way. It doesn't bother him. He didn't even really notice it at all, but I notice it and it bothers me. So he's still gonna wear it. It's fine. I'm still happy. I'm pretty happy with it. I don't have to wear it, so I'm not bummed about it. But when he wears it, I'm kind of looking at the back of the neck like the whole time, so whatever. He's thrilled that I can make him t-shirts now, because he loves a good t-shirt. So I am hoping we find a place to get knit fabrics that are gonna be stuff that he likes and stuff that I like, because most of the knit fabrics at the shops around me are like little kid prints, and not very many kind of sophisticated looking fabrics. So that's my only issue. Okay, I have 2 more sewing projects to show you guys. If you're just stopping in for the first time, this is only the second episode I've done that has sewing projects because right before my last episode, I had just bought a sewing machine. So this is all new to me. I don't know anything. So I'm still open to like suggestions and ideas from you guys. And if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, it's because I don't. Yeah, but last time I showed you guys a little zipper pouch that I made that was all wonky, and I was talking about how it was wonky because I didn't have a way to cut super accurate, perfectly straight lines, and I think that that's why it ended up not so great. So right after that, I ended up getting my, I got a rotary cutter and a cutting mat and a big ruler and everything because I want to start quilting soon too. So yeah, I finally had all of that stuff and I was able to cut perfectly straight lines, and I tried another zipper pouch. So this one is more of like a notions pouch size. It's a little bigger than the last one. I got a bigger zipper. I picked up a few zippers so that I can make some of these out of my scrap fabric. So this is a denim that I used for my Cleo dungaree dress that I showed last time. So when we were shopping for fabric for Ben's t-shirt, I saw this in the sale bin. I'll turn the zipper pouch inside out so you can see this fabric because it's so cute. So it's covered in sheep and it has a sheepdog right in the middle, and I think, oh my gosh, I just like fell in love with it because I knew right away I wanted to use that as lining for project bags. So I did it. I used another YouTube tutorial for this. I'll try to put a link below to the one that I used if I can find it. But it was like one of the things that first popped up when I just Googled like DIY zipper pouch sewing or something like that. So there's a bunch of YouTube videos that show you how to do this, but I did a much better job this time. Everything lines up much better. The zipper isn't wonky. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun making this one, and I am looking forward to making a lot more. And I wanted to share one with one of my patrons from my Patreon because every 2 months I'm doing a giveaway for them. So this month, the winner of a Notions bag made by me is Celeste Full. Yay, Celeste. When you see this, send me a message, and I can't remember if I already have your address, but just send me your address and I will get one of these little Notions pouches out to you. Thank you so much. So if you guys already don't know Celeste, she has a podcast too. It's called the Yarn to Table podcast. So go check her out. She is running an awesome knit along right now called the Fiber Quest KAL. So this is a total tangent, sorry guys, but she's one of my favorite podcasts as well. So go check her out. So thanks again, Celeste, and I will send you one of these pouches. Okay, so that's 2 sewing projects. I have a third. I made a pair of marigold trousers, and it's another Tilly and the Buttons pattern. Okay, here are my marigold trousers. They're kind of shapeless looking, but I made these out of a viscose fabric or rayon fabric, and I'm pretty dang proud of these. They also fit great. I love wearing them. They're super comfy. I made them as high-waisted as I wanted because I love high-waisted pants, and a lot of my hand knit sweaters are a cropped length, which you guys probably already know. I'm super into like a boxy cropped fit, and that's gonna look awesome with these. It's an elastic waistband, so I can even just kind of pull them to wherever I want them to sit. They're great. I am really excited because I learned a lot of things in this project. I inserted an elastic waistband, I did pleats, I did lined pockets, I did darts, and I changed the length before I cut the pattern pieces. So I didn't just make them and then hem them to the length I wanted. In the pattern, it has one of those lines where it says lengthen or shorten here. So if you want to lengthen it, you can cut it and then separate the pieces so that it sits longer on your fabric. To shorten it, you would just do the same thing, and then where it overlaps, you just kind of redraw the line to, yeah, just to make it work. So I bought the paper pattern and I didn't want to cut into the pattern. So I used tracing paper to trace out my size. And I did not shorten it at that point. So what I did was I cut out the whole, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble describing what I did. Okay, so the pattern size I chose based on my measurements was the size 4. So I traced and cut out the size 4 on my tracing paper. This paper is probably gonna make a lot of noise, but I really wanna show you guys what I did because I feel pretty smart about it. Where these creases are, this is where I think this was the place where it said lengthen or shorten here. So instead of cutting it and taping it to the length that I wanted, I figured if I wanna make this again, I might want the longer length because if I make a nicer pair that I wanna wear with high heels or something, I might want the longer length, or if I want like a capri version, I can still use this piece of paper without cutting into it and changing length and having lots of different pieces floating around. So I just have the original. I kind of measured my inseam and kind of figured out what length I was probably gonna want to end up with. And I figured out however many inches, and then I subtracted those inches from these pants by folding it up, increasing it that way. Okay, so now I've got the shorter leg by folding it, but then you can see on the edges, because it's not totally straight lines, there's gonna be these kind of overlapping spots where it's not gonna make a straight line. So what I did was just, this is really difficult to show. See if I can do it on this side. Oh my God. Getting attacked by paper. I'll do it this way. This is better. Oh my God. So in the spots where something like this happened, where it wasn't a totally even fold, all I did to get a straight line when I was gonna cut it out on my fabric was just take that spot and just fold it over itself. And then I kind of folded it all the way up until it kind of met the edge. And then I just looked at it to make sure that I was still making a nice even line. If that makes sense. It's really, really difficult to show you without it sitting on a table. But I felt pretty smart for figuring that out, and I already have a mess in this sewing room. And I just don't want to have more pieces of paper and things just floating around than I really needed. And so I really, really, really wanted to find a way to shorten the pants with still keeping the original tracing intact. So it totally worked. Admittedly, like, they're not the most impeccably made pair of pants, but the good thing is this fabric, it's dark and there's kind of a busy pattern on it, and so it, you know, all my little like wobbly mistakes and stuff, like, I don't even notice them or see them at all. They're well hidden. The only thing that bothers me that I do notice when I'm wearing is that this pocket tends to just sit open, like more open than I want it to, and I kind of wish that it would lay flat. So I'm not totally sure where I went wrong. I don't know, I'll just keep an eye on it because I want to make those again. I'd love to have some more awesome pants I can wear with my crop sweaters. So as far as sewing plans, I have the pattern for the Coco, another Tilly pattern. I like feel very safe and comfortable using these patterns because they're geared towards beginners, and then they had the sale, and so I just bought 2 patterns just so I could save some money. So I got the Coco dress and shirt pattern, and I thought I'd be making it sooner, but I just haven't found a knit fabric that I like that I wanted to make the Coco out of, so I'm just gonna wait on that. All right, so I bought the pattern also for, I think it's the Kalle Shirt dress pattern. It's a closet case pattern, And that one I did as a PDF download. So I printed out all the pieces and kind of puzzle pieced them together, taped them, and I have traced and cut the pieces, but I don't have a fabric yet. I had a fabric that I wanted to use. I bought a super light chambray that I was originally gonna make the Stevie out of, which was my very first sewing project, but I decided that that fabric wasn't gonna look good as that dress. So I was like, oh, I'll just make this other shirt dress with this chambray, but then it ended up not having enough, and I thought I did. So now I'm on the lookout for some fabric for that. So those are my sewing plans for the future. I think I'm gonna keep making these zipper pouches because it's like a really satisfying, super quick project, and they're super useful. So yeah, that's all of my own crafting I have to share for you guys today. And now I'm just gonna wait for Ben to come home so that he can join me and talk about his Lopapalgebra sweater with you. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for stopping in, and be sure to leave a comment, or if you made it to the end of this video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up or a subscribe. It will help the podcast out a lot and help other people find me. So yeah, thanks again for stopping by, and happy knitting, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.